We're good. Hey guys, welcome everyone. I appreciate you coming on board again. We're on our next episode here, next installment of Take Five with Frank. We have two of the more well-traveled and popular legislators in our district, Holly Schepisi and Kevin Rooney. These are two people I met early on when I joined the race, and I've told them before, they're great role models, you know, not just and what legislators should be doing, but they're great people as far as standing behind their communities. They're both funny as hell. I enjoy being out with them both. So what we do is I thought we'd introduce the two of them, and then we have a lot of questions for these guys, as you can imagine. Holly Schepisi has served in the New Jersey General Assembly, representing the 39th legislative district since January 2012. She began serving as the township attorney for Rivervale, a position she held until 2011. In addition, she was also the public defender for Oakland and an alternate prosecutor for Oakland and Westwood. She served as deputy minority leader since January 2020 and resides in Rivervale with her husband, Paul, and their two children. Assemblywoman Schepisi serves on the health and the housing committees. So thank you so much, Holly, for being here.
Thank you, Frank, for having us.
Sure.
And we'll be talking about a lot of the issues that both me and Kevin see on a day-to-day basis, particularly since the pandemic has taken place. Some of the initiatives that are coming down the pike are needed. Some of them are being put forth, utilizing the pandemic as an excuse to try to get some very radical programs put forth and radical types of ideologies. I'm a practicing attorney. I sit on the board of Bergen Community College. I'm on the executive committee for their foundation. I'm also involved with the Adler Aphasia Board. I sit on the advisory board of SB1 Bank. I am also an entrepreneur. I own a company in Hoboken that provides hydration and IV therapy in conjunction with 5 doctors. I also own a billboard company, and I've just started during the pandemic a concierge legal consulting practice. So definitely it's been busy, it's been hectic, and looking forward to tonight. And Kevin?
Thank you. Thank you. Kevin Rooney has represented the 40th Legislative District in New Jersey General Assembly since his appointment in December 2016. Before serving in the Assembly, Rooney served as the committeeman in Wyckoff Township. As a fun note here, in 2013, he won the Food Network series Chopped and donated his $10,000 winnings to Oasis. He is managing partner with HMS Global Holdings and resides in Wyckoff with his wife, Haley. They have 4 children and 3 grandchildren. Assemblyman Rooney serves on the Appropriations Committee as well as the Consumers Affairs Committee. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here today.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks for having Holly and myself. Looking forward to some spirited discussion tonight. As Holly mentioned, there's a lot of things going on in Trenton. A small percentage are good, and the rest are detrimental to the taxpayers of this great state we all live in. So I'm eager to discuss those issues. But one of the things I'm looking forward is the state slowly opening. Now we're going to this virtual thing that we're doing here tonight. And in the future, I hope to be able to sit across the table from you in a different type of setting. And I know Holly would be looking forward to that also. In addition, when I was on the Township Committee, I served 3 times as mayor in Wyckoff. So that helped me gain a lot of the talents that I was able to bring to Trenton. You got 2 spirited fighters on tonight with you.
Yes.
We don't like to take no for an answer. We like to fight for our constituents. It is not just the constituents in our respective districts. We fight for all 9 million residents day in and day out. So again, thanks for having me.
No, I appreciate it. And, the one thing I will say about the both of you, whatever you're doing in Trenton, it's almost immediate that the people in your districts know about it. And not just exactly what you're doing, but your feelings on where it's going, your feelings on what they're not doing for us and what they're not doing for other people in the state. So, I enjoy following both of you guys when you come back and hearing what's going on. But we have a ton of questions. Kevin, I wanted to go to the first one. You touched off on it. We're now starting to see portions of the state open up. while it appears to be a relief for some business owners, do you feel that our state is opening up fast enough to allow these businesses to actually survive? And what would you have done differently?
So first off, I don't think the state's been opening up fast enough. And I know there's mixed emotions on how we could do it. But let's just go back in time and think about the businesses that were allowed to be open. When the governor said non-essential businesses must remain closed, but he opened up your Walmarts, your Targets, your BJ's, Costco's, right, et cetera. How did he come to the conclusion that a small mom and pop in the township of Westwood or Wyckoff was not able and capable of opening in a safe manner? There was no science behind that decision. I think he just threw a dart at the dartboard and said, this makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of business fail. Recently the governor said, look, we're going to do outdoor dining. And I know, Frank, you spoke about an event you had last night where it was outdoor dining. But when the governor did that, he said, okay, we're going to need to make some money off these businesses that have been closed for 3.5 months. So we're going to charge them a $75 fee to expand outside their normal footprint. And, Assemblyman DeMayo and I came out against that quickly, as did the rest of my colleagues, saying, does the state really need $75 from businesses that have been struggling?
Yep.
Over in Passaic County, if your business sits on a county road, the county wants that business owner to provide $5 million in liability insurance just to put a few tables out on the sidewalk. So the government as a whole has been hindering the ability for businesses to open. And it's unfortunate because it's struggling way too fast. So let's go back in time again. We closed down all non-essential businesses. We didn't allow the mom and pops to be open. We allowed only the large conglomerates, which are primarily union workers, to be operational. So what would I have done? I would have opened it in a more sensible, reasonable way and in a quicker fashion. New Jerseyans are smart people. We are hardworking people who want to go back to work. But between what the state has done with unemployment and the lack of paying, and the federal government with a $600 bump, people are sitting home making $1,225 a week right now. So there's not an energy to go back to work in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So I think that right now we're on a pathway to start to open. You can see the governor has slowly christened us with his magic wand to say we can open certain businesses. Right. But I think Holly will attest to this. For the last 4 months, when we've sent our letters down to Trenton, when we've spoken to the governor directly, when we've spoken to his administrative staff, we have not gotten direct answers. They just didn't know how to respond with a direct answer.
So, Holly, I know you get out as well. Are you seeing the same getting her out?
It's not even a function of not getting a direct answer. It's that they themselves, months into this, had no answers. So, one of the things is, they've almost been utilizing, as, Kevin said, a dartboard. I call it a magic 8 ball. There has, all we hear about is how it's based upon science, but yet it's not. Because if it was based upon science, there was no reason that I should be able to go to Kmart or Target or Harmon's or any of the places that I went to during the lockdown and couldn't have gone to one of the local businesses in Westwood, in Montvale, in Washington Township, Ramsey. And whenever we would broach this with staff, with the governor's office, and ask for guidance, ask for these businesses some sort of timeline, ask for, in the event that you are going to permit these businesses to open, what do they have to implement? Give them lead time. Let them understand what the new guidelines will be. And they refuse to provide it. They never provided it in some instances until literally like 48 hours before they would have a press conference, talk about blessed souls, and then, anoint, whatever business of the day was going to be permitted to survive. And I'm somebody who had COVID. I understand how, real this virus was and is, but the decisions being made were being made to pick losers and winners of industry, as opposed to what made sense from a scientific perspective. And that's what I have a real big issue with.
Yeah, and obviously Murphy came from the same industry I did. there's people there that spend their entire career, whatever comes out of their mouth, they believe is the Bible. And when he said, and I almost heard 1,000 people in my career say it, oh, it's the science, oh, it's the numbers. Basically, leave it up to me, I'll figure it out. Kevin just said it. New Jerseyans are smart. We're tough, we get it, and we can see through that stuff. So as soon as he said, the data will determine the dates, he basically said, I don't know the data and I have no idea about the dates. So it was just obvious, Holly. I agree with you. These guys just don't know. And
you're right, Frank. And the interesting thing is, to your point, when the governor says stuff, New Jerseyans want to know the background on how he came up on that data, right? And they want to dig deep because we are smart, we're proud, but we're also very inquisitive, right? And we want to know an answer. So, for example, right now we can have indoor dining, right? Starting in next week or 2 weeks from now, up to 25% of your capacity, right? We can have gatherings, indoor gatherings, up to 100. Okay, not restaurants, but indoor gatherings up to 100 people, right? But on Monday of this coming up week, we're opening up what? Malls. They're going to exceed 100 people.
Sure.
Right, but we're not allowing indoor graduations. We're not allowing weddings to be over 100. The following week, we're opening up the horse track racing. Right, we're opening casinos. It's going to exceed 100 people. But again, we can't have a wedding that exceeds 100 people. We can't have an indoor graduation.
Yeah.
It defies logic. And when you ask that question, well, how can you do it for this? He can't give you an answer. Of course. And these are direct questions to the governor. We have a weekly conference with just legislators, and he can't give us an answer.
Yeah. Hopefully we have another year and change of that, and we can move on. This goes, I think, to a little bit more of how things have changed recently for the both of you as parents, professionals, and legislators. Your lives are normally pretty crazy, but aside from these new Zoom meetings and conference calls, what has been the biggest challenge or change for you in your day-to-day family work-life balance? And finally, are your constituents seeing a different side of you as a result of this crisis, good or bad? Which is obviously all good.
I'll let Holly go first because she's got the younger kids.
So as a mom to an 8-year-old, a 16-year-old, we have the 2 dogs, the one-eyed cat, my husband and I both working from home. With remote learning, I turned into a school teacher as well. I would never know if I was in the midst of a Zoom meeting myself and my son would come running in half clothed with his laptop going, Mommy, can you do a haiku? As I'm trying to Google on my phone what a haiku is because I haven't done one in 40 years and trying to just juggle it all. And I have to say, as somebody who's worked my entire life, I've had every job. I've been working pretty much every day of my life since I was 14. And what a lot of people don't know is during this crisis, I got laid off for the first time in my entire life. So I had COVID, I was sick, my husband had just started cancer treatment, and in the midst of all of it, I get an email from the CEO of where I work saying that I no longer had a job. And so doing that in conjunction with helping my kids, being there as mom, helping all of our constituents, and becoming, without any idea that we were going to be, an arm of the unemployment office and Department of Labor for the state of New Jersey on top of it. It's been a bit of an overwhelming period of time, but it also makes you appreciate so many things. And having this time with my kids, having this time with my family, having to balance and juggle it, but it's been phenomenal. We do family football games on the front lawn. I ride my bike everywhere. It's the family time when you're in the rat race, when you're in politics, you don't get. And that's probably the one really good part of everything that's gone down over the past several months.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still married, so that's a good thing, right? So, survive the 4 months. But no, I mean, you wind up, with your spouse, you become best friends because you're spending a lot of time together 24/7 every day. And as Holly said, in politics, we're never home. It's rare that I'm home for a dinner, maybe Sunday, but not during campaign season. So
Uh-huh.
we're always out. So this has just been different that I'm at home and I actually gained the COVID-15. Holly probably lost it by riding the bike. I've been cooking so much, so I gained it. But in all seriousness, our staff, kudos to all the staff in the legislature right now. They've worked harder in the last 4 months than I think they've ever done. And not that they didn't work hard before. This has been 24/7 for them. Yeah. Because as Holly mentioned, we became the arm of unemployment. They shifted all their responsibilities to our legislative offices. And our staff has done a yeoman's job getting the information. But it's also a frustrating job because, as Holly would attest, we like a direct answer. We like to get a result. That's why we're all in this game, right? We have type A personalities and we want to get an answer. And when you're dealing with unemployment and folks that haven't been paid in 3 and 4 months, and you're calling down unemployment, you're emailing them. In my case, I'm speaking to the commissioner directly to get answers, and we're not seeing those results. That's when it becomes frustrating. Yeah. And putting that all aside, one of my biggest concerns right now is depression, and how that's affecting a lot of folks, both from the financial end, and then again being home in an environment where they haven't been able to get out. So we're starting to see an uptick in a lot of depression. A lot of suicides, a lot of domestic violence. And that's the next big wave, unfortunately, that we need to tackle and address before it gets out of hand. Because I know over at Newbridge, for example, they are full capacity just on those issues. And so we need to take a serious look once we get back down to Trenton and we can do legislation, unlike what we're going to do on Monday, where we have 20-something bills and they're all nonsense bills, right, Holly? Right. They're garbage. They're nothing that really will effectuate a positive change in anyone listening or the rest of the 9 million folks in this state, unfortunately.
Yeah, you would have imagined that given where the governor slipped up recently with all the deaths that we've seen in the long-term care facilities, that they would be watching what's going on. To your point, Kevin, with suicide attempts, depression, suicide ideation is up 1,000% in the last 120 days. So it's something that you kind of hope he's going to look back at the mistakes he and his staff made and at least try and stay in front of this. But I suspect the answer is probably no.
I hope so, Frank. The governor just released on his latest executive order that nursing homes could start visitation, right? Which has been something from a family perspective they've needed for a long period of time. But that's not true in the VA. Yeah. So just before I got here, I had a woman that was hysterical because she hasn't been able to see her father, who went through the process of having COVID over with the VA in Paramus. She hasn't been able to see him other than the 10-minute window visit. Right. And again, it's just not fair to those folks. And that hasn't changed because the VA has a different set of rules. And we're paying for it.
Yep. Well, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We've recently seen, and I guess everyone has known this, we've recently seen a dramatic increase in the incidence of violence in many of the cities across the country, including the toppling and removal of some statues. We also saw the defacing of a Columbus statue in Paramus recently. I know that's District 28 and you guys are 39 and 40, but what are you saying to your constituents when they reach out? Because I imagine you're getting some sort of inquiry about what's going on. I know we've had a few local marches here that have never turned into anything big, but I know I get calls and I'm running and I'm getting calls about it. I can imagine you guys as sitting legislators. What are you telling your constituents if they are calling at all and asking about this trend?
It's a difficult time to navigate through some of this stuff. I represent a district that just a couple of days ago, the Board of Education, with absolutely no transparency, no notice to the public at large, took a very hot, controversial topic from years ago and decided to vote to eliminate the mascots at both schools, as well as the names of the sports teams. And it's something where, we're finding a lot of people, whether or not in politics, education, are having these knee-jerk reactions to what's taking place around the country. And it's not necessarily for the good of the country. We're in this process of trying to erase history, erase, the good, the bad, and the ugly of what makes our country. And as we've learned from anybody who has studied history, and I've worked all over the world. I worked in East Germany before the wall came down. I worked for the British Parliament. I have seen countries that most people in the United States may not have ever even heard of. And, we sometimes, idealize other types of government and other countries because people have no idea what it's like firsthand.
Yeah.
And unless you've visited Cuba and unless you've been to places like Cambodia or East Germany before the wall came down, you don't understand, as maybe somebody who's out there toppling statues, that, our history is so important. And if we are going to judge everybody by today's standards, and if we are going to judge everything by something that may offend someone, we will lose the entire essence of what we are about. Now, when I hear our high school has eliminated the Cowboys because Cowboys has now somehow, some way turned into a racist term. And my sister lives in Texas and lives on a ranch and owns a restaurant and is part and parcel of that culture. And she goes and talks to her friends who are every different race. She talks to her boyfriend who was raised on an Indian reservation and is actual Native American, and tells him what's going on in Rivervale, Hillsdale, Montvale, Woodcliff Lake. They shake their heads going, we don't even understand this.
Yeah.
And I think that, oftentimes now we're just doing things for the shock value, for the hashtag, or, to get the soundbite, but nobody is actually talking and nobody's having rational discussion and nobody's accepting differences of opinion. And that scares the living daylights out of me.
Yeah.
I'm up. So, I take the same approach as Holly. It's a tough pathway we have to follow sometimes, but it's clear to me that, peaceful protests are something that this country was made of, right? If you think about what happened with the Boston Tea Party, that was a peaceful protest that went the next level, right? Yep. That's how we started out as a country. But where this travesty that took place with George Floyd when he was killed and murdered, all right, it should have started off as a peaceful protest, and it morphed into something far left of anything we've ever seen. They're on a pathway to not only erase our history, which, think about it, we don't have a long history in this country as it is. Right. We're not Italy, we're not Ireland, Germany. We don't have the long history that Europe has. We're a very brand new country compared to them. They're not over in Italy right now bulldozing the Colosseum because at one point the Romans had slaves, right, and used them for gladiators. They're not doing that. But here in our country, where we've allowed this to continue, we have lockdowns and safe zones, autonomous zones in Seattle. That's absurd. We're kicking the police out of their own departments. That's absurd. As a father whose daughter is going to graduate from the State Police Academy in 3 weeks and become out as a detective for the Attorney General, I'm very proud of her. At the same time, very, very scared for what she's going to face when she comes out of that academy, because the world is changing. To defund our police departments is a ludicrous, absolute ludicrous decision and pathway we're on. And it's time that, we stand up and say, look, it's not okay to tear down our statues. It's not okay to erase our history. It's okay to peaceful protest.
Sure. That's
where it needs to stop.
Yeah, no, we have a close friend, Kevin, and his son recently graduated from Secret Service, White House detail. And I can't imagine they've come out in circles defending the White House. I mean, it's almost insane to see that U.S. Secret Service surrounding the White House to protect the White House. They protect the president. When he goes out, they protect the president. But to see them around the White House in Lafayette Park just blows my mind that this is where we are right now.
They defaced the Lincoln Memorial yesterday. And where does it stop?
Oh,
You know,
De
it just
Blasio announced today that they're removing the Teddy Roosevelt statue from Central Park. And so I don't understand, as the mayor of New York City, what he thinks he's getting out of doing that.
Yeah.
What sort of message, how that advances any cause right now.
Mhm.
And where do you stop? Is there any place that we stop?
Yeah.
And I don't think there is.
When he's got a leader of the state, the governor, saying, listen, pulling down the statues was a healthy form, right, of basically their expression. And I don't know what expression that was other than to be criminals and what they did. But, back to de Blasio, recently he was on tape with his wife, and she was asked a question about the police, and she said, my utopia would be no police. So in a utopian world in which she would live in, no police presence at all. She's not living in the same reality we are.
Yeah, no. And didn't grow up in an environment where what's out. I mean, she knows what's out there in the world. I get it. And I think Holly said it. It's just, it's this concept of shock value. And it blows my mind that something will happen and you sit around, and what I think about is, how is that going to be topped? How, breaking, smashing storefronts on Fifth Avenue in New York City. How do you top that? They're taking down the Teddy Roosevelt statue.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know where it stops, but who knows? Well, let's shift gears because we can talk about this for forever. Now we'll get more into budgeting. Governor Murphy recently announced that the federal government would be fully funding the reconstruction of the Portal Bridge, a vital piece of North Jersey's mass transit infrastructure. What are your thoughts on this breakthrough and the potential effects on New Jersey, Kevin?
Well, first of all, if we're going to get federal money to improve that situation, I'm all for it with respect to this, because there's not a payback on that end. Anything to improve the overall ability for us in New Jersey to not only operate from a transit perspective, but for the flow, right? We're a state that's a pass-through state. People pass through the state going up to the New England area or down to the rest of the country or into New York City. So that helps. But where I do have a problem, and I know you're going to talk about this, Frank, is the other part of the borrowing from the federal government that this governor wants to achieve. The Assembly voted about 2 weeks ago at this point, Holly, on a $5 billion spending plan, which in reality could go as high as $14 billion. Now, Frank, you were in that industry, right? The payback on the first $5 billion over 3 years is $470 million in interest and origination fee. Mm-hmm. It's a $50 million origination fee. So he's asking the taxpayers of New Jersey to grant him the ability to borrow up to $14 billion. And then furthermore, allow you to put that surcharge on your property taxes for about 35 years. Now, we're already one of the top states in the country on out-migration. 4 of the counties in which I serve are in the top 10 for the highest counties in the country for property taxes.
Right.
How much more can we do? We can bring all the money into the state through the Portal Bridge, but if people are going in the other direction, it's not going to help us.
Right.
So I'm against borrowing. I'm okay if the government's going to help us improve a situation that we don't have to pay back. But in this case, on the other $5 billion up to 14, I have a big problem with that.
Yeah, agreed. Notwithstanding the fact that there's already been a case that the state has won that you can't bond an infrastructure expense. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's another Phil Murphy saying, yeah, but my plan is different.
Right. He wants to balance the budget.
Yeah.
He wants to balance the budget.
He's got a lot of things to pay for, so he's got to really make sure he bumps up those property taxes again.
Well, there's a lot of free things out there, right?
Well, things are free, right?
Yeah, I guess. But, we can see that they're not free when he's asking to borrow $14 billion.
Yeah.
And when you couple it with some of the initiatives coming down the pike, I sit on the housing committee. There was a bill that came through last week. That was probably one of the worst bills I've seen in all the years I've sat on the housing committee, and that says a lot. And under this bill and social justice and COVID, if you are a tenant, rental tenant of any sort of property in the state of New Jersey, it could be two-family, it could be several hundred unit apartment complex. If you allege any sort of financial distress due to COVID, any whatsoever. You were out of work for 1 week and you got unemployment in lieu of your normal salary, and you make $150,000 a year or less in the state, you don't have to pay your rent from when this began until 60 days after the governor lifts all emergency orders. And the only recourse a landlord would have, whether or not it was a single mother who's relying upon, her tenant to offset, the 2-family house or whatever, is the landlord could only receive back 10% of the tenant's after-tax take-home money during this period of time. So for all the people who are on unemployment in the state right now as a temporary measure, the maximum amount of rent that a landlord could ever get back would be about $510 per month. And the only other option that the landlord has is they can do a payment schedule that for every 1 month of rent not paid, they have to offer 6 months time for that tenant to pay back, with no relief from property taxes, no relief from their mortgage obligations. And this is something that we could have coming before us as early as next week to vote upon.
I have it in a propes on Friday.
It is a terrible, terrible bill that will cause, you want to talk about property taxes rising with borrowing, coupled with a bill like this, where all of the commercial properties are going to go in and do mass tax appeals and have reductions of their tax and have everything shift over to property owners. It is going to be a disaster for every person who owns a home in the state.
And Holly, I'll wager you a beer that not one Democrat voted no against the bill.
No.
Kevin, we were talking a few minutes ago before it started about where some of these REITs and some of these funds that manage properties like this, they're already trading at levels that indicate, that we're not through this, that they're going to look to put property owners and landlords in a position where why would you want to be in that? Why would you want to spend your money to try and improve yourself and improve the property? I don't get. We need changes, and we need it right away, because the policies are not going in a direction that the true Republican Party, I think, extols, which is, you work hard, you try and build your life based on real estate investments or other sort of investments, and then you rely on things like contract law to help protect you when it comes to recouping proceeds. So I don't understand where this is going, but hopefully we got people like you guys out there to provide reason.
Well, we're going to keep fighting. I think the biggest fear that I have is COVID's not going away anytime soon, right? And we all know what's going on in the 11 states that were just quarantined today, right? Where Florida numbers are up in the 5,000 range. And the governor has these executive orders that he basically just keeps extending, right? Portions of it. And to Holly's point, if you heard her, it's when his executive orders finally end 60 days later. So if we have COVID go through the fall, we could see renters not paying rents for a year.
Yeah.
And so how do you expect a landlord who has mortgages on their property, they have taxes due, they have other ancillary, insurance, so on and so forth on their properties, pay their bills? It's almost impossible. There's not that much money in their savings accounts to do this.
Yeah.
And a lot of the smaller landlords are also our small business owners.
Yeah.
And so they're getting double hit with no relief from the state.
Yeah.
And that's a real unfortunate part about it. And if you look at it, 70% of our state's economy is driven by small businesses.
Yeah.
28% of small businesses in the state are owned by minorities. And so you look at like the impact that this is having on just so many different populations of people. It's horrific.
Yeah. Well, we're rolling at the end, but one of the questions we had, Holly, was mostly for you.
Okay.
And that was, we see you recently, you've been traveling on bicycle to visit every single town in your district. You've been a lifelong Bergen County resident. Is there anything that you've seen or come across that has surprised you or that you've never seen before?
riding your bike gives such a unique perspective to our area. As you know, as Kevin and I were saying, and as you know, Frank, as an elected official, as a business person, you are always on the go, 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 go. You're just racing to get from one place to another. You never really see what's around you. And I took my bike out of the garage, the shed, hadn't been on it in 7 years. And it was my mental health thing. And I started going slowly and then found myself doing 25-mile bike rides and going through the 23 towns that I represent and doing selfies in front of our closed businesses. And going week by week into these communities, started to see the for rent signs going up, started to see places that have been there forever slowly taking out their furniture, slowly taking out all of their stuff, and really getting a direct view of what the long-term impact of this is going to be. And it also showed how important it is for all of us to be, willing and able to cut through red tape, to do whatever is needed to help our small businesses. I sponsored a bill that hopefully will be up this week, which will allow businesses as of right, if the town permits it, to expand into the streets. I did it for retail as well as for restaurants because our small retail desperately needs it. The Bergen County executive, unbeknownst to me, called down to the governor's office, called down to Paul Sarlo's office, called down to Sweeney's office, screaming and yelling because the bill allowed municipalities, just during this period of the emergency and the executive orders, to waive blue laws for their small businesses to try to help them be sustainable and try to help them survive during this period of time. Our own Bergen County executive shut that down and said that he would do anything in his power to make sure that that bill did not move forward unless they struck the language waiving the blue laws to help our small businesses during this period of time. So it's stuff like that where on the Republican side, we're going, we need to be flexible. We need to waive fees. We need to get behind and do whatever is needed to allow our businesses to thrive. On the Democratic side, it's let's put up as many roadblocks, as many fees, as many things that make it more complicated and still claim that they're supporting our businesses. And I call BS.
Yeah. Well, you guys call BS more than most. I enjoy it. Running, I look for role models around the district and around the area, and you guys are definitely two of them. I love how much you fight. I love how much you smile. It's one of the things as I go through this, Holly and Kevin, I want to be like you guys. I like the way people talk to you when they walk away from you, when they're done, they have this look or this feeling of, you know what? She answered my question. She talked to me. She was honest. I may or may not have liked what she said. I got a straight answer. We don't get that from the governor. We don't get that, quite honestly, from Josh. And, I'm just glad I have people like you two to look up to and look forward to working with going forward. So we went over and we didn't lose a single person. So this is awesome. I wanted to thank you guys both very much. As I mentioned, you're both role models and you're great friends, but I really appreciate you coming out here today. And I know everyone here knows how to reach you and knows how to get in touch with you. But again, I just wanted to thank you both for your time. We're getting in crunch time here now. We're inside of 3 weeks to see how a 100% vote by mail travesty works. But, hopefully we'll work this thing out well and move forward.
Thank God, Frank, you don't have Patterson.
Yeah. Well, even Ridgewood rejected. Ridgewood just sued because I think it was 700 ballots in Ridgewood that got rejected. That is a meaningful number of ballots.
Absolutely.
For anybody who's watching this, you're obviously committed. You're interested. It is so important that we, particularly our area, has Republican representation in Congress as well. Right. It is so incredibly important. We talk about moocher states. We have had our senators, a lot of our congressional people in the state of New Jersey are out talking about anything and everything other than helping New Jersey.
Sure.
They're out there talking about helping any country, any sort of state. They never talk about helping New Jersey. And we need people who want to fight to bring it back to New Jersey and help New Jersey.
Yeah.
And that's for the next couple of weeks, that has to be all of our focus.
Yeah.
Get our best candidate to run in the general,
Sure.
and then use all of our resources to just get that messaging out.
Yeah, true. And sort of on a final note, and we've been here making calls and receiving calls for the last month or so. It's really important for people to know, get your ballot in. The day isn't July 7th. Election day is the day you get your ballot. And it's really important. People need to understand. There are folks saying, I'm just going to go to the polls. You can't. People are saying, I mean, obviously, unless you've got a disability and you can, but it's really important. If you want your voices heard as a Republican, you got to get your ballot in. Hopefully you look at column 5, but you got to get your ballot in. I think that's people need to understand, things like, well, you're not going to be locked in for the rest of your life if you do a vote by mail today. It's a special situation that this governor has not been transparent enough in giving people not just a heads up on that it was happening, but a roadmap on how to do it. So I agree with you, Holly. And I just want to sort of let everyone know at this point, we've been spending a lot of our time making sure people understand this process. Fill out your ballot, get it in the mail, or get it to one of the drop boxes in the various towns. And, hopefully we'll try and continue this turnaround that we've seen. But thank you guys very much.
To the question on the screen, we hope that you can go to the polls in November. That would be my goal. Again, this is playing into the Democratic plan perfectly as far as vote by mail. That's what they want to see. So we're going to keep fighting in Trenton to ensure that we can get back to the polls in November. I know on the GOP side, our chairman is fighting hard to make sure that currently that process is protected for the primary, but going into the fall, that we get back to the polls.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you very much again. We're gonna hop here, but I appreciate your time. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.